All right. Oh my God, I feel so honored and lucky to have all three of you together. I know your time is super, super precious right now, so thank you for taking some time in the middle of all of this to join this conversation. And welcome to the people who are tuning in now. My name is Manny Kutiel, and this is Manny's Super Civic Cyber Conversations. We are bringing our civic work to you through the internet, through our phones and our computers. And I'm just going to pretend I'm sitting in a room with my three favorite people, Lateefah, Janice, and Bevan, even though I'm sitting alone in my kitchen with a blanket on my knees to keep myself warm. Today, so this is the blanket right here. That's the secret. Today we had our fourth. This is our fourth conversation today, and it's with Lateefah Simon, the president of the BART Board, Bevan Dufty and Janice Lee, the two individuals who represent San Francisco on the BART Board. And we're going to talk about what's going on with BART and all the things that are happening here. We're going to get some information. I just want to say two quick things. One, if you have a question at any point, you can just type it into the Q&A box. You don't have to wait till the Q&A portion. You can just type it in. We're going to talk for 15, 20 minutes max, and then we'll have about 10 minutes for questions. The whole thing will be 30 minutes, and then you can go on about your evening. Second thing is Manny's is closed and we are not able to bring people in. And so I would love to ask you for your help to support Manny's. There's a link in the chat box. You can donate to Manny's or become a sponsor. Even better, it's $36 a month. And we could really use the help right now to keep my business afloat so that we can reopen our doors when all this is over and do these things in person again, not on our computers. Okay, so the first thing I want to ask is just like I want to do a quick check-in with the three of you because I know three of you personally. How are you doing? Like, how are you feeling right now? How's your heart? How are your minds? Like, how are you?
I'll start and I'll try to be quick. I'm making it a point. I have my dining room table. I live in Richmond, but very North Richmond by Pinole. I can't walk to a store. So Instacart takes 4 days. I don't have a car. So I'm just, I made my living room, my workspace with me and Layla. I failed with homeschooling, so we're spending a lot of time together. I'm extremely nervous about the fate of folks, and at the same time, I'm so clear that the solidarity that's happening all over the country and all over the world, and in this city, and all over the Bay Area is so beautiful, something that we've never seen before. I'm okay, but I am worried about the folks who have so little access to the social safety net that's been broken. And so, my faith in my family and these beautiful colleagues that I have, and yourself, Manny, have been keeping me afloat. So I'm okay, but we have a lot of work to do.
Good. Lateefah, thank you. Janice, how are you doing?
Yeah, I feel like this is just a really, really surreal time for us all right now. I think Lateefah, she put it well in that, we are unveiling all of the really bad shit about our society
Yeah,
and how we don't take care of some of the most vulnerable and marginalized in our society. And those are the folks, that I'm really thinking of. I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate that I work at a nonprofit. I have
right,
surprisingly job security right now.
right,
I have health insurance right now. I've been able to really keep as clear of a head as I can and really be focusing on the work of BART. And
yeah,
I am very lucky to have a home that I'm safe in, so that I can focus on what's going on with BART. But I know I'm fortunate in that. And yeah, I think it's been a fascinating time to see everyone sort of come together. And I think in times of crisis, that's really what courage is, right? Being able to
yeah,
show leadership and make decisions and show resilience,
yeah.
even amongst the most difficult of times. So I've been proud of how BART, our city, how we've come together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Janice. Bevan, how you doing?
So I want to start out and say that in your introduction, Lateefah actually represents a portion of San Francisco. So
Yes,
we
I
are
do.
the
Oh, you
three.
do? What part of San Francisco?
Embarcadero, so District 6 and District 10.
Oh,
So very important spaces in terms of poor people, people of color, Black folks, Latino folks, Asian American folks, homeless folks, folks who are struggling. I'm super proud to co-represent those communities with my fellow,
yeah.
um, my BART board members who I love dearly.
We like to share. So Lateefah and I share Embarcadero Montgomery Station. Then Bevan and I share Balboa Park. And then Bevan doesn't like to share. He's got the rest in between himself.
He has the hardest station, and the most blessed station is Civic Center, meaning that it's tough in the sense that, for decades and decades, we got to let you share, Bevan, but that there's been so much deep neglect. And thank God you're holding so much of that with us.
So I really wanted to say, Manny, that the three of us are incredibly close. And for anybody watching this, for me, running for the BART Board back in 2016 was really an opportunity to sit next to Lateefah. And then, we worked really hard because we wanted to see Janice elected in 2018. And so it really is just such a blessing that the three of us, we just enjoy each other's talents and humor and concerns. And it's a great experience serving with both of them. And for me, I talked to you before we went on the air about, we've seen Mayor Breed be very strong and come out very early with shelter in place. And I said that as a gay man that I took a lot of pride that our public health director is Grant Colfax. And I knew that, a gay man that has been fighting the AIDS epidemic for 30 years would be the public health director that would say, this has got to be about public health and science, and we have to make the right decisions and don't hesitate, don't equivocate. And so I do think that San Francisco is setting an example. And then sort of on the flip side of it is that, as Janice and Lateefah know, on Friday, high school admissions for private schools came out, and Sid is going to urban. And so in our household, there's just been incredible happiness about that, even though, will schools even be open in the fall? We don't know right now. And so it's a very surreal situation where we want to harness that exuberance and excitement that Sid has in a very uncertain time.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Bevan. I just want to get a sense of where we are right now.
Yeah.
So if you could ground us in how many people are taking the BART right now?
Yep.
How the hours I think have changed a couple times, and where are they now? Where are the hours? And also just what are we dealing with right now, boots on the ground with the BART system?
So I'll be quick, and then I'll let my colleagues answer. The goal of BART right now is to keep moving, because we know that, first of all, we operate in 5 Bay Area counties. Yeah. We would say, Janice would say maybe 4.5. We're not in Santa Clara County yet, but our people are, and we're building out a system there with the help of VTA. Here's the deal. Every single hospital, every single grocery store you can think of, the invisible workers, our home care workers who are working with dementia patients, folks who are operating our telecommunications, our law enforcement, not just officers, but the operators, your 911 operators, they are essential workers. And they come from, not just in San Francisco, they come from Antioch, they come from Richmond, they're coming from all throughout the district. And at this point, what we know, as of a day ago, about 35,000 people are catching BART every single day. That is a departure from the 430,000 on a typical workday. But that's still 30,000 folks who we believe more than 90% of those are essential workers who have no other choice but to make it in, to keep the Bay Area safe, sound, secure. And the fact that, folks, we have groceries on our tables, that we have law enforcement doing the good work and making sure that law enforcement and not only law enforcement, but I should say first responders available at your door if you're not feeling okay, healthcare workers. So BART is an essential service. It is running. We have made 2 decisions, right? And those decisions were based on the fact that we're losing a lot of resources. BART is one of the only institutions, transit institutions, that has what we call a high fare box recovery. So of our operating budget, imagine your household budget, 70% of that budget, of our operating budget, comes from me and you and many other folks tagging in and out of that system. So when you have 90% of those folks no longer taking BART, we're losing $8 million a week. So we had to make some really painful and hardcore decisions. And that was closing our closing our stations 3 hours early, from closing them at 12, closing them now at 9. And then we're in talks and we're having data conversations every single day based on ridership where we're going to be. And we can talk more about hopefully the stimulus money that we're going to get in to keep afloat, but we're not there yet. We haven't gotten an allocation, but BART is still essential. We are not furloughing folks. We believe that we have to keep moving. We don't want to contribute to increased joblessness. We are an essential factor of keeping the Bay Area safe and secure. And that's where I am, and I know that's where my colleagues are.
So let's talk about the bailout money, because it's so top of mind. I know it's like $1.5 billion or something like that. That is supposed to be divvied up between the transportation systems of the Bay. I was with my friend yesterday who works for the Golden Gate Bridge, and he was saying how, it's going to be so important. The Golden Gate Bridge needs it because they're losing, I think, $5 million a week because no one's coming to the Bay to cross the bridge right now. How does that pot get divided up? Like, what does that process look like? And that's the first question. The second question is it going to be enough to keep this essential service operating at the level we need it to?
I had my thoughts, but I would love for my colleagues, since I spoke so much, to take that on. And then
I can step in. I also feel like I know who you're hanging out with yesterday, Manny. What happened congressionally is that there was a bill that finally got bipartisan support in the last week, and it was carried heavily and brokered, particularly by Speaker Nancy Pelosi, my congressperson. And it was a $2.2 trillion package that was swiftly passed by the Senate, the House, and then signed by the president. This will allow the release of funds in approximately 7 days. And that package includes $25 billion for public transit in urban centers around the country. After doing the math, we figured out it's about $1.3 billion that's coming to the Bay Area specifically for transit operations. The entity that's in charge of figuring out how that $1.3 billion just locally, regionally here in the Bay Area, is how that's allocated is the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. It is a 9 Bay Area county transportation planning organization. They collect bridge tolls, and they do land use and transportation planning across 9 Bay Area counties. And they are in the process of determining how those allocations will occur. I am, and BART is strongly in the position that the subsidy should be based on the revenue impact that the transit operators have faced. So that's obviously fares. BART's losing a lot of money in fares, but that's parking revenue. So, for example, SFMTA Muni, they receive decent amount of revenue from parking revenues, which they're now generally losing out on. We're going to start having a better understanding of sales tax impact. So, a lot of our transportation, a lot of our stuff in the city is funded by sales tax, by hotel taxes, so on and so forth. So every agency will be impacted directly in different ways. But from the position of BART, we really want to focus on the revenue loss. And I think that over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, I think MTC will be coming to decisions about how that funding will be allocated. And then I think we'll have a better sense of what that means for each transit operator. I think that I don't want to be promising anything, but it would be a question of, can we maintain at least the level of service we are right now? Could we go back to extending hours? Or does this just not cut it and we still have to, be looking at different service reductions? I think, that'll really come soon. So what y'all can do is engage your commissioners and just keep tweeting, keep, signing those petitions.
And I think what Janice, is you're highlighting is, one, we're in week 2 of the shelter in place. No one and no municipal government in the world has figured out how to deeply model what could happen. So BART is doing worst case and best case scenarios. And we're counting on the MTC commissioners to know and understand the formulaic realities of the 27 operators, throughout the region. and figure out how to make sure that we're going to be able to survive, not just now, but we're talking about 2021 in the new fiscal year and beyond. For many of us, transportation is not a privilege. It is an absolute necessity. And these, BART board members, not just us, Rebecca Salzman is one of our deep allies. She's not on the call right now because she represents Alameda and Contra Costa, but she is an outspoken advocate who's been on the phone like us 8+ hours a day with our delegations from the state and from the feds, making sure that they understand. Bevan, I'm sorry. I want to make sure you get an opportunity to weigh in here.
Oh my goodness, no. So I think to one of the questions that Manny asked, our schedule currently is 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. weekdays, and then we're going consistently 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. We did have a virtual board meeting on Thursday, and in the far-ranging presentation, one of the options raised was a Sunday closure. And I just want to say that if I count right, I think there were at least 5 out of the 9 directors, or definitely more. I mean, all 3 of us are opposed to it, but we don't accept a Sunday closure unless things have really become catastrophic, because all of the people that President Simon talked about, all those people are using BART on Sundays. I mean, this virus does not take Sundays off. So,
So I know we are limited in time, and these are supposed to be kind of short and choppy. So I think this is going to be my last question. But we've talked about where things are. We've talked about the financials and the money coming from the federal government. I wanted to ask you all about how you're thinking about, and maybe it's part of the modeling exercise, but also just where your brain is going to the longer term effects of what this shutdown, this restructuring of how we interact with each other might be on this extremely important public transportation system. What are you thinking might be the long-term ramifications of this on BART?
Well, clearly there's going to be ramifications, and economists from the city and county, economists in our shop, and in other county and in transit shops from around the country. APTA is our national institution that is organizing transit folks. There's been much talk about the next 3 fiscal years and the impact on the economy. But here's what's important. BART is one of the few, actually 3 elected bodies of any transit institution in the country. The fact that you have Janice Lee and Bevan, Dufty, and myself, you have 2 queer folks, the Asian American sister, a Black woman, and a gay man who's a single dad who's killing it.
Don't let my baby mama hear it.
I know, but you know what I'm saying. Well, I would say, single and when he's with you. But the idea of the values of making sure, hell or high water, we want to keep a transit system accessible and available, but at the same time making sure that we're clear that these times are ridiculous. And so even with the closure, right, even with the 9 p.m. closure, making sure that folks know on our website, we push for that there are bus bridges and there are opportunities. We're distressed, but folks will not be stranded. This transit system that we are in charge of running and advocating for is central to the lifeblood of the Bay Area. And no one, whether you're houseless, right, or whether you're in a very good situation, should be without the opportunity to get to and from health, your essential job responsibilities. So that's really, essentially our value. We have 4,000 folks who work for BART. About 2,000 of those folks are out in the field every single day, out of an office, in the shops, on the trains, in the stations. We deeply believe in sort of the working class value that BART provides for our workers, and we're going to continue to push forward. Other folks, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think, as always, Lateefah put it really well. I think that there's going to be a pretty significant hangover We're already starting to have a better understanding of what our future budgets entail. I am optimistic and I believe strongly that we will get through this patch right now and we will continue providing essential service while we shelter in place. But the impacts and the deficits that BART will face over the next few years is going to be significant. And it will be true for every business, it's going to be true for every government agency. We are going to struggle in this together. The second thing I would say is that I don't think that this necessarily means that BART changes course radically. I
Mhm.
think all of the moves that we are doing to build affordable housing with urgency on BART land, to push forward for our first ever low income fare program that should be
Right.
rolling out in the next couple months,
Yep.
to be rethinking the way we use our space at our parking lots, the way we can increase the accessibility for our stations. We're reopening bathrooms at like El Cerrito del Norte, 19th Street, at
Right.
Powell Street. Like we
Yeah.
need to stay on course because we need to ultimately win back the trust of our riders and continue expanding our ridership. And I
Yeah.
think that's where we will see the resurgence in our public life, our urban life, is when we see that return to public transit ridership. Because I think that public transit is a lifeblood of a city. You think about any world-class, beautiful international city, it will have a world-class, high-quality transit system. And I
Right.
still deeply believe that BART is on track to do that, shelter in place or otherwise.
Right.
Manny, I just want to ask,
Okay. Yes. There we
this
go.
is the Twitter address for the MTC. So it's MTCBATA, which stands for Bay Area Toll Authority. And so
Okay.
that's the Twitter handle for the MTC. And
What should we do?
well, I see that Adina Levin, she just tweeted out that she's watching us, and so I think if you could tweet and say that BART is the life's blood, and that we are more impacted than any transit agency in terms of loss of revenue impacting our ability to serve the public.
Yeah.
And because BART doesn't have a seat on the MTC. So our wonderful supervisor, Hillary Ronan, she's appointed by the Board of Supervisors. Nick
Right.
Giuseppe,
Yes.
BART director, he
Well,
represents the mayor, but BART doesn't have a seat on the MTC. So we need the public to speak up for us.
got it. And if folks have questions, panelists, you can type them in the Q&A box now. Now is a good time to type in those questions. We did have some. I'm going to read through them real quick.
We can do lightning round. We'll be quick in answer.
Yeah, so
Yeah, we'll be quick.
can I just answer a couple of these questions about fare increases? So people are asking about fare increases. So I would say that BART has a fairly good model. It's pretty similar to Muni, in which we are indexed to inflation and we are set on a regular, like I think every 2 years, to increase slightly based on the rate of inflation. And there, to my understanding, has not ever been another fare adjustment outside of inflation-based adjustments. So it is planned, it is known, and it is not like arbitrary. The second thing I'll say is that this board, more than ever, I just talked about it, has been really, really concerned about the affordability and accessibility of BART to low-income folks. And the fact that this board did just approve, and it was not unanimous, just approve the first ever low-income fare program. It is only a 20% discount, but I think it's going to be the first time BART is going to say, no, we actually have to increase affordability of our system for the most low-income folks in our community.
That's
I think that's huge, and that's a step that no board before us has ever taken.
I mean, it can't go without saying, to Director Lee's point, is that BART is, and when I saw the commenters' question about how expensive BART is, yes, we increased, and many of us did approve the increase in fares. And although it was limited, we groaned about that. We had to make sure that we were on par with very low levels of inflation. And we should send that PowerPoint to you all. But pushing forward, a means-based fares program is so critical at this time, and knowing that 20% discount isn't enough, but it's something to start with. And equity and accessibility are so important. Many of us, and some of the directors are extremely against this. We want BART to be as as affordable as possible. And one day, hopefully in our lives, no one will have to pay for mobility, to be able to get groceries and to be able to go to dialysis and be able to go to work. Many of the people that ride our trains, I start in Richmond in the morning, and in the morning you have folks with vacuum cleaners. You see folks with coolers who know that they're going to be away from their homes for 12 hours because they're in-home healthcare workers or they're construction workers who deeply understand the inequities of what's happening in the Bay Area before this crisis and even after this crisis.
Mhm.
And so how we legislate and how we bring those stories to the dais and how we complicate the conversation, that's our job.
Mhm. Real quick question from Tyler about air quality, and this might be a technical question, but it's about how airlines are being asked to maintain certain air quality standards. Is BART thinking about, does it need to do anything about its air quality or circulation to, make sure that it's keeping up to certain standards, or does that not really apply to BART?
We're running on electricity.
Yeah.
So
You're fine.
it's a bit of a different conversation.
Um,
We'll continue to, and a year and a half ago, we moved forward a policy to continue the maximum opportunities for us to be efficient in terms of anti-global warming operations. And so I don't know if any of the other
Yeah,
board
I wasn't here for this, but I think this was passed by the board maybe in 2017-ish. But there was like a sustainability plan of some sort, and that outlines pretty strong commitments to renewables, to a lot of best practices in combating climate change.
Okay, I want to end on this question. It's something that's come up a lot for all three of you. I want to give you the opportunity to answer this. We talked to Jeff Kaczynski yesterday, and we talked to a lot of city leaders. And one thing that's come up is this. I think it's actually a Rahm Emanuel quote. At least that's what Jeff said. That every crisis comes with an opportunity. And I wanted to, Janice, you kind of touched on it a little bit about pushing through with some of the improvements. But how could potentially this crisis also provide some opportunities from BART to
Yeah.
execute on some of its goals?
I'll start with a quick one. If y'all recall back in 2015, 2016, our social media team began the hashtag This Is Our Reality, where BART just like ripped the Band-Aid off and they're like, yeah, it's pretty shit. And like, let's tell you about the decades of, where we didn't invest in public transit in the space that we're in now. I think where I really deeply appreciate BART and the communications team, headed by Alicia Trost, is really been around transparency to our riders, putting it really riders and our employees first. And I think that, as we move through this, I think our openness with our ridership numbers, giving daily updates through our website and making sure people have the information and know what's going on is really the opportunity we have to rebuild our trust with the general public, with our ridership, and that we will recover from this. We will.
I would say I completely agree, and I just have to give daps, and I want to give the last words on this to Sir Bevan Dufty. If we were in England, I would have tried to figure out a campaign to knight this brother, because when we were running, and I was very fresh off losing my husband, I had a little kid, and he was like, I'm there with you. We're going to figure this out. All of our voices are needed. We made a commitment, and it's so beautiful to have Janice and folks like Rebecca together as a unit, moving very, very myopically focused on equity and understanding that, we can't revolutionize completely a system overnight. But in this crisis, the opportunity to focus deeply on those deeply most impacted, by crisis. Folks before Corona was folks who have no homes, folks who have limited opportunities to get food and healthcare. They're even more impacted. Folks who are deeply exposed to the criminal justice system and over policing, they're even more impacted. Folks who have to shelter in place with absolutely no home. If you run a transit system like we do, we know that everyone, even with a ticket, with a Clipper card or not, there are people. And we love them. And what we want so much is for folks to be able to get the services that they need to get. And I feel like we hold that dear. This is an opportunity in this very unrealistic time. It's like a movie, to put our values first. And I just want to thank Bevan as being one of the youngest senior members of our board, but really pushing all of us to consistently bring forth our values and what we're really here to do. We're here to make sure that people get to and fro, regardless of what they look like, regardless of where they work, regardless of their health or houseless status or homeless status. And I can't say that we're leading the nation, but I believe that we are. And it's really because of the values, I think, that Bevan, that you pushed us consistently to move. And I'm so happy to be the president post your time. So
can I just say, Manny, in 30 seconds, that part of what I said to you at the beginning before we even went on the air, that 6 of the 9 BART directors have been on for 3 years or less. Yeah. Before we got on the BART board, when you heard about BART employees, it was pretty much negative. It was like, why are these folks paid so much? And why is this one person, making overtime that's egregious? And I think that we've really helped to change and understand that it's tough to be middle class in the Bay Area. And it is good that we pay a good wage for people to raise their families. And even still, so many of our BART and Muni employees are out in Antioch and Tracy and other places like that. But I feel that, to end this discussion, that I know the 3 of us are so grateful for the people who work for BART, our station agents, our custodians, our train operators. Those are our heroes that are coming in every day. And I think that we have tried to elevate those people as well as all the good people that work for BART. And to Janice's point, hopefully reclaim the public's trust. We haven't been happy with the way a lot of things have gone down at BART, and we've changed a lot of them. It used to be that the youth fair ended at the age of 12, and now it's full on throughout till 19. So we are making a difference, and we're very grateful that you could have us to talk about this critical service that we're providing through BART.
Well, thank you so much, Bevan. Thank you, Janice and Lateefah. Directors and President Simon, I love saying that. I could get used to that. Manny's, like I said at the beginnings,
and my mom, right?
Closed.
We're gonna see if Joe Biden is calling you in a month or so, okay?
Yes. Vice President Simon. We need your help. Please click on the link in the chat box.
Dogs like that, they're excited.
Joinit.org/o/Manny's. Please consider becoming a sponsor of Manny's. It's $30 a month. And it's we could really use the help. And please tweet at MTCBATA. We've also included that Twitter handle in the chat box. So tweet at MTCBATA and let them know that you want, BART needs your love and your support. Thank you to all of you, Bevan, Janice, and Lateefah, for bringing your families and your partners into this conversation too. They're such an important part of all the work that you do, and we love them.
Thank you, Manny. Love you. Bye, Janice. Bye, Bevan.
Love you.
Talk to y'all tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye. Say bye to Bronco.
Bye.